Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with lesson number 24 in our incredible new tutorial series where you are learning artificial intelligence on the Jetson Nano. I'm going to need you to pour yourself a nice big mug of iced coffee, and I'm going to need you to get out your Jetson Nano gear. I'm going to need you to get ready to learn some cool new stuff. Hey, want to pause as always and give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over on Patreon. It's an incredible encouragement to me to have you be a part of this channel, and it motivates me to continue to strive to develop quality educational content. If you guys are not helping out yet, look down in the description. There's a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and get ready to learn some cool stuff today. Now, this lesson 24 is really a follow-on to lesson number 23, where you learned how to do some bitwise operations and kind of learn the basics of masking, where I sort of showed you could create a mask that had a black region and a white region, and then you could do bitwise operators to sort of blend or to mask a video image with the mask that you had created. But it was just really, really simple stuff. So today we're going to jump in, and I'm going to work you through kind of a practical example of how you would really use masking. Now, this lesson today is one of the most important ones that we've done so far. It's really, really important technique. It's using thresholds and using thresholds to create masks. So I really hope that you'll go through it with me carefully. This might be one that you want to pause and back up and kind of work through a couple of times. Again, it's a very important lesson. Really looking forward to it. I had a lot of fun putting this one together. Okay, let's jump right in. And what I'm going to need you to do is come over to the Jetson Nano and open up your Visual Studio. Okay, and then we are going to be working in our OpenCV folder. So we go to PyPro, and then we go to our OpenCV folder, and then we come here, and we are on lesson number OpenCV, and it looks like 13. And what we are going to do is, I'll just call it threshold and masking. Okay, thresholding, let's call it threshold dash masks. Okay, .py. The py is pretty important, as I've explained in the past. Okay, we've got that set up. There's a couple of files I'm going to need you to run out and get, because we're going to be doing some sort of combination of still images with video images to kind of show you these concepts of masking and thresholds. So I need you to open up a browser and go on over to the most excellent, not TopTechBoy.com. You will be going today instead to bacteriaworld.com. Yes, you heard it, bacteria-world.com. So that's bacteria-world.com, and then /cv.jpg. The file is cv.jpg, and it is on the website www.bacteriaworld.com. And then I need you to open up your PyPro folder, which you should have on your desktop. And then what you can do is you can just grab, if I will get out of your way here, you can just grab this image and then drag and drop it down here to your folder. And of course, I'd already done it, so mine was already here, and it didn't like it when I tried to do it again. So, man, it really didn't like that at all, did it? Okay, another thing you could do is right mouse click on it. Let me just take a second here. I'm going to delete it from my folder. So I will move it to trash. And then you should be able to come over, click on it, drag it, come over here and drop it. And there, it liked it that time. Okay, so I've got cv.jpg. And we're going to be using this in our lesson today. Okay, so we've got that. We're going to come back to Visual Studio as such. Okay, and now we are in our fresh new program called OpenCV 13-threshold-masks. And now we need to go and start with our standard starting program. You guys should know this drill by now. This time we will go to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. You can use the little search icon to search on web camera on the Jetson Nano to get to this page. You can then come down, click on the two little pages icon. That selects the text. That selects the code. Come over and copy. And then we will come back to our program here. And then right mouse click and paste. Now we kind of have that core program that we pretty much always start with. And I will now get rid of this browser out of the way. Okay. I think also I'm going to click this so that all you see is my code view. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, since I'm using the Raspberry Pi camera, I'm going to uncomment out these two lines, the cam set and the cam, and this will be operating with the Raspberry Pi camera. If you happen to be using a webcam, you would uncomment out this line that says cam, and your web camera would either be a 0 here or a 1. Usually either a 0 or 1 will work there. Okay, now as you know, I also very much like to always start with a window. You know, it's very important, I think, for us to keep our windows neatly organized. And so I'm going to do a move window down here. And I am going to move this core window. It's going to be in a little different position today, but you'll see why later on. I'm going to do a CV2.move window. And then I'm going to move the window nano cam, and then I'm going to move it to the point 0. I'm just going to move it down just a skosh to give us a little room there like that. Okay, I actually think this should probably run now, so I'm going to go ahead and run Python file in terminal to see if it's looking happy. All right, boom, just like we expected. Okay, everything's good. Now, this lesson, we are going to be building lots of mask layers and lots of masking and combinations of images. And I want to keep my windows organized. And if I keep these windows at 640 by 480, I'm not going to have enough room on the screen for all the windows I am creating. So we're going to go in and we're going to make that a little bit smaller this time so that we have room for all the windows. And so I'm going to make my display width here half that big, which is going to be 320, and then I'm going to make the height 240. All right, and that will allow us to build all these windows, because I just think that you're going to understand these lessons better if you look at what you've done at each step. I don't want to have the starting image and go through 40 lines of code and then show you the finished image. You're not going to understand it just listening to me talk. So after we do each step of this process, we're going to show the results of that step. So we're going to kind of be stacking these windows up as we go. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm still getting over a cold, and I know the last few lessons it's been that way because I make a bunch of lessons in one day, and so it's not like I have a 6-month lingering cold. It's just the day that I'm making these I happen to be feeling great but still a little stuffy as I recover from the cold. Okay, so now we're going to come down and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we are going to do. We're going to be combining that image that we got, that OpenCV image, and we're going to be putting it on top of the live video image that you are watching here, or that you're using in the OpenCV. And the first concept to kind of help you understand what we're going to do is you've got to understand there's going to be two parts to the image. There's going to be the background and there's going to be the foreground. And the way you do a project like this is you've got to build the background, and then you've got to build the foreground, and then you've got to create the composite image, which is the foreground in front of the background. And so we're going to have to build a foreground mask to do the masking that we need in the foreground. we're going to have to build a background mask to do the masking that we want in the background, and then we've got a masked foreground, a masked background, and then we put those two images together. Now that's a lot for me to say, but I think as we go through this, it's going to make a lot of sense. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we just need to read that image in, that OpenCV image in. And let's go ahead and do that. And the way I would do that is I'm just going to call it CV logo. Okay, it's CV logo, and we need to read it from cv2.im read. Make sure that you have it in the main PyPro folder. If for some reason you're having difficulty, you can put the path name from your root all the way down to that file, and that will absolutely work. But if you configured Visual Studio like I did, that PyPro will be your home folder, and everything will be referenced from there. So I can just do a cv2 read, and then that file was called cv.jpg. And let's just hop over there and make sure that I did not want to do that. Let's hop over to our folder. Okay, yeah, you see it's called cv.jpg. And so since it's in that main folder, we should be able to just open it like such, okay? And as promised, as we load things, we're going to look at them. So let's look at our CV logo. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to resize that. CV logo is equal to cv2.resize, okay? And that CV logo, what are we going to resize? We're going to resize CV logo. And then what size are we going to make it? Well, we're going to make it that same size that we had up there, which was 320 by 240. And this is kind of the first thing you're going to learn today. If you're going to be doing masking and bitwise operators and working with two different images, a foreground and a background, they both have to be the same size. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that that image CV logo is the same size as the video image that we have coming in, and we do that with this CV logo cv2.resize command, and that looks pretty good there. And now what I am going to do is, all right, I'm not going to show that one. I'm going to turn it gray first. And so we import that color image. Then I'm going to say CV logo gray is equal to cv2.convert color. You should have seen these commands before. We've done these before. What are we going to convert? CV logo. And then we're going to use the command cv2.color underscore BGR to gray. Okay, because as we get ready to do thresholding, you can't threshold on a color image. You got to take this image that we're going to be creating a mask from. First thing we got to do is convert it to grayscale. All right, so this will convert that image to grayscale. And then let's go ahead and show it. So I'm going to say cv2.im show, and we'll just call it CV logo gray. And then CV logo gray, the file name. The first CV logo gray is the window name, and then this is the file name. And then we're going to be good boys and girls, and we're going to keep our windows organized by doing a move window, and we are going to go move CV logo gray, our window, and we are going to move it. We're going to move it over 0, and then we're going to move it down 350. Okay, so it'll put it beneath our video image. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what happens. Ah, okay, boom, look at that. Okay, here's our live video. You can see that it's smaller. And then here's our OpenCV resized to the same size as our video window. And we've converted that to grayscale. So that's the first step in creating a mask, okay? Now, we got to kind of think about what's going to be the background and what's going to be the foreground, okay? I'm going to be the background, all right, and this is going to be the foreground. But I'm going to have to apply this image to create a mask for the background and a mask for the foreground. And so let's go ahead and jump in and let's create the background mask. Okay, we are going to jump in and create the background mask. So I'm going to get a cue. So we're going to create the background mask by doing a threshold. And I'll kind of explain how the threshold is. That mask that we just looked at, that CV logo, that's still an image. It's a grayscale image. And so at every pixel, there's a range from 0 to 255, so it's still an image. We want to change that from being an image to being a mask. And when we make it a mask, it'll still have the same number of rows, the same number of columns, but it's either going to be on or off. It's either going to be white or black, no in between. And then we can use that with bitwise operators to create the effects that we're looking for. So to do a threshold, the threshold command returns two values. The first one we don't really care about, so we're just going to put a underscore there, just something for the value that we're not using to come into. And then we are going to make a background mask. Okay, and so this background mask will be the matrix that the mask will come into. And that mask is going to be made with a CV2.threshold. And then what are we going to threshold? We're going to threshold that CV logo gray. Okay. Now, remember, white is 255 and black is 0. Well, what we want is we want the white to be white and we want everything else to be black. Okay. And so for you to be white, we have to have a threshold level. Let me set my threshold level to 50. Okay. You just got to kind of guess. And then if you exceed the threshold, what do you want to go to? You want to go to full on, which would be 255. And then what type of thresholding will we do? We will do CV2 dot thresh underscore binary. Now there's a lot of different types, but this is just saying I'm going to compare each pixel to the threshold value. If it's below it, I'm going to make it black. If it's above it, I'm going to make it white. Okay, so it's binary. It's either on or off. There's no in-between values. Okay, and let me make sure that you can see that. I hope that I'm not getting in your way there. Okay, so underscore is the unused variable, comma, BG mask. That's our mask. It's CV2.threshold, and it's CV logo gray. And we're keeping everything that's 50 or above. We're going to make that white, and everything below 50 we're going to make black. And the technique we're going to use is a thresh binary. Okay, I think now we should go ahead and look at that mask that we just created. And you can see that the BG mask is an image. It's just black or white. So we're going to say a CV2.im show. What are we going to show? We are going to show background mask will be the name of the window, and then we're going to say we're going to say background mask. Okay, and then we're going to be good, and we're going to move that window. Okay, we are going to move the window, so CV2.move window, and what window are we going to move? We are going to move the background mask. And then where are we going to move it? I'm going to move it over 385 and down 100. So I'm just going to start running these images across in 2 rows. And I think that should work. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay. Now look at this. So we start with our color image in the top left, then down below it is a is a grayscale image that we want to turn into a mask. But look, when we turned it into a mask, we want, since this is the background mask, we want the background to be white because that's the part that I want to keep. I'm going to want to keep the white part, and I'm going to want to mask with the black part. But if you look, I got this one C, but I didn't get the other two C's, which means I did not set my threshold value high enough. I need to set it higher to throw out those two gray C's. And so let's cue to quit. Let's put it at 150. Okay. And now I'm going to right mouse click, run Python file in terminal. Okay, now I'm almost there, but you see how it didn't completely get a good clean C here, that it kind of didn't do exactly what we wanted there. It didn't get the whole thing, so I'm going to quit. And I'm just going to say like 225. Okay, run Python file in terminal. Boom. Okay, that's a perfect mask, right? So what does this mean? This is our background mask. And so what I want to do is I want to take the background, which is me, the video window, and anywhere that mask is white, I want to replace that white with me. And anywhere it's black, you're just going to keep the black. You're going to black out the stuff you don't want, and you're going to keep the stuff that's white. Does that make sense? That way, it'll be me in the background, and then later we'll come in and put the foreground in. But right now we are just building the background. Does that make sense? So our background mask makes white the things that are going to be in the background. Now, I don't want white in the background. I want me in the background. So I'm going to do an and between me and this mask. All right? So where this mask is white, you're going to get me. Where the mask is black, you're going to get nothing or black. So I am anding me to the mask. So you and me to a 1, and you're going to get me. You and me to a 0, you're going to get 0. So and me with white will be me, and me with black, and you'll get black. All right. This will make sense if you think about it. Stop and think about it if you need to. I know, I'm cheating. I'm having hot coffee and iced coffee. Kind of like, I need one for each one. This one will be for the foreground. This one will be for working on the background. I need double coffee today. Okay, now that I have the background mask, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the background. All right, but now to create the background, I've got to and that with the video. So I'm going to have to come down here into the while loop, okay? Because I've got my mask set up, but my live image is actually down here. So I've got to come down here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to read the frame. Okay, so we're going to read that frame. And now we are going to create the background image. Now, how are we going to create the background image? Well, I'm going to call that background image just BG. So that background image is going to be equal to CV2. I'm going to do a bitwise underscore and. So I'm going to and together what? Well, the frame, which is me, and you got to write it twice for some reason, frame. And then what am I going to bitwise it to? The mask. And what is our mask? Our mask was background mask. Okay, the background mask is what we just created up at the top of the program. I am bitwise anding that with frame. And so where the mask is white, you're going to get me. Where the mask is black, you're going to get black. Okay, now I think we should go ahead and show that so that we kind of understand what we're doing. So we're going to do a CV2 dot I am show. What are we going to show? We're going to show the background of our image. And then we called that background. We just built it. And now we're going to do a CV2 dot move window. Okay, and what window are we? I'm having trouble typing today. We are going to move the window background. And then where are we going to move this one? We are going to move it over about 703 and down about 100. Okay, and I think that should work very well. So let's see and take a look at this background image now. Right mouse click and run. Okay, boom, look at that. Is it starting to make sense? Here's the live video. I get my image that I want to create the mask from. I turn it into a mask. In this mask here, I have black and I have white. White is a 1, black is a 0. I'm going to AND that with me. And then what you can see is I'm in the background. I'm behind the mask. Okay, I'm behind the mask. You see, I can make the mask a hat, kind of. Well, anyway, I'm behind the mask. So our background at this point is complete because I am in the background. What is missing? What is missing is the foreground. So now we got to go and we got to build the foreground. Okay. Now the foreground is a still image, so we don't have to do that in the while loop, right? We can do it one time at the top because it's a still image. It doesn't have to be in the while loop. So let's come back up here to the top, and after we make our mask, now let's start building the foreground. Okay. And I think that, do we already have our foreground mask? No, so we need to build our foreground mask. Okay, so the foreground mask is going to be equal to cv2.bitwise. Okay, now let me run this here. Let me pause a second here. Okay. All right. So you see, this is our background mask. Now I could go in and I could build my foreground mask doing thresholding again and all of that sort of stuff. But what is my foreground mask? It's the opposite of my background mask. Now for the foreground, I want the logo to be white and the background to be black. Now I could go in and I could do some fancy stuff with thresholding, but the easiest thing is to just take the knot of the background mask and make that the foreground mask. And that way I don't have to do a bunch of thresholding and thinking about values again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come here and I am going to say now that my foreground mask is just going to be equal to cv2.bitwise, and this time I'm just going to say bitwise knot. It's the knot of what? Background mask. So rather than building the foreground mask from scratch, I'm just going to take it and I'm going to invert, or make opposite the background mask, and that will be my foreground mask. Now let's take a look at that and see if that works. So I'll do a cv2.imshow, and then what I want to show, I want to show the foreground mask. Okay, and then that's going to be over 385 and down 350. All right, and this should get it to line up. No, this is the IMShow, which is just in, I'll do a copy, which is just FG mask. So I'm showing the mask, the image FG mask, in a window called FG mask. Now I will do the move window, cv2.move window, and I want to move that FG mask. And then where do I want to move it? I want to move it over 385 and down 350, and that should keep things lined up, I think. So let's take a look. Now this should be the foreground mask, which should be the opposite of the background mask. So let's take a look at that. Run Python file in terminal. And somebody is not happy because, why? You guys probably saw me make my mistake. FG mask is not uppercase, yeah. Right, so I called it FG uppercase mask, so I need to do that. Right mouse click, run Python file in terminal. All right, now look at this, okay? So coming across the top, I've got my background mask and I've got my background image. All right, now I have my foreground mask. So what do I need to do now? I need to create my foreground image by anding the foreground mask with the image that I want to be the foreground, which is the original logo. Okay, the original logo, not the grayscale logo, the original logo. Okay, so now I'm going to quit out of this and I'm going to create my foreground image. And for simplicity, we're just going to call that foreground. And that again is going to be a CV2.bitwise. And we're going to do a bitwise and, okay. And what are we going to and together? We're going to and together the CV logo, no quotes, just the file, or the array or matrix CV logo. And again, you do it twice, CV logo. And then what mask are we going to and it with? The mask is equal to the foreground mask. So I'm anding our original color OpenCV logo, and I'm anding that with the foreground mask. Okay, we're going to get a little fancy here, and we're going to copy this to save a little time. Okay, and I'm going to paste. I'm going to put a line here. I like to kind of put blank lines to make it easier for me to read. Okay, instead of background mask, now we're going to show a window foreground. We're going to show the foreground. We're going to show the foreground. Okay, so this is actually not the foreground mask, but it is the foreground. We are showing the foreground. We are showing the foreground. And this time on foreground, we're going to want to come over further so we're not on top of that other one. And so we are going to come over 703. And then we are going to go down by 350. Okay, so we built the background across the top. We're building the foreground on the second row. Okay, so let's look and see what happens. All right. Okay, we're going to have to tweak this a little bit. No, this is going to be okay. So we anded the original color logo with the mask. Where the foreground mask is white, we keep the original image. Where the foreground mask is black, we put black. Now don't worry that this black here looks like the background. It's black. Okay, it's like we want it to be black, and it just so happens since we have a black background, you don't see it. Excuse me. Okay, now you see this is my background. It's the image of me, the video, anded with the background mask gives me the background. Then I take the foreground, the image, I and it with the foreground mask, and now I have the foreground. Now, in order to have the end result, what do we want? We just want to add the background to the foreground. Okay, so how would we do that? That we need to come back down here, and we need to do that in the while loop because that video is going to be updating. So we've got to do that step down in the while loop. So we're going to come here. And what we are going to do is we are going to say that, let's call it the composite image. So the composite image is equal to CV2.add. I'm just adding the two matrices together. And if black is 0, if you add black to anything, you're going to get anything. Do you see how that works? It's just you're adding the numbers together. You're adding element by element. You're adding those arrays together. So CV2.add, what do I want to add? The background to the foreground. No masking. I built the background. I built the foreground. Now I'm adding those two together. And now I'm going to copy and paste just to make it run a little quicker here. Control copy and then control paste. And now I am going to show the composite image. I'll call this window composite image. And then I want to show the matrix that I just created, composite image. Okay. And then I am going to have to move it over. I'm going to have to call this composite image. And I'm going to have to move this even further over. So let's say 1017 and down 100. So that should be pretty good. So let's look and see what happens. Boom. Okay, there it is. You see, I am behind the logo. I am the background and the logo is the foreground. I just really want to make that a hat for some reason. Okay, so we build a background mask, then we build the background. We build the foreground mask, we build the foreground. Then we add the foreground to the background and we get the composite image. And I think that is just pretty darn slick. I think that is just really, really, really slick. Okay, now the one thing I don't like a lot about this, it's doing what we set out to do, but you see, like, that thing is kind of blocking me. Okay, that thing is kind of blocking me. And so I would like it to be on there a little bit more like a watermark. I would like it to be a little bit more like a watermark. Okay, so how would I do that? How would I do that? I got to break in here at some point, and I want to add a little bit of me back to the foreground. Okay, so I think the best place to do it here is in the foreground where we had this foreground. Okay, so let's look where we did that foreground. Okay, so where we did that foreground, I need to find that foreground. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new foreground, and I'm going to blend. Okay, so you'll kind of see, so here we've got our composite image, and after we do our composite image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a blended. Yeah, I'm going to create a new image that I'm going to call blended. And that is going to be a CV2 dot add weighted. Okay. And that add weighted is going to be combining frame, which is me, okay, with no, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to break in, like where we're going to break in to do this. So be a little bit patient with me here. You know what? I'm going to create a second background image. That is what I am going to do. I'm sorry, I'm going to create a second foreground image. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second foreground image, and that second foreground image, foreground 2, is going to be CV2 dot forgive me. All right, so give me just a second here, because this is cool what I'm trying to do, but I've got so many things going here, I'm having trouble figuring out where to break in. Okay, so right here where I have this foreground image, I want to create a new foreground image. Okay, I want that new foreground image to be a blend of the foreground image and me in the background. So I have to create a new blended image. Okay, I have to create the blended image, and then I will mask that blended image. Okay, so let's come over here, and I'm going to create this image called blended. Okay, and blended is going to be cv2.add weighted. Okay, and what am I going to add? I'm going to add frame, and I'm going to take about, and that's me, right? So I'm going to take about 50% of me, and then I'm going to take CV logo. I'm going to take about 50% of that, and then you got to put a 0 here, which is just a parameter you don't have to worry about. So you see, instead of adding two things together, I'm going to add to create a blended foreground, and that blended foreground is going to be 50% me, and it's going to be 50% the logo. Okay, but at this point it's just going to be a complete image, right? So let's just go ahead and show that image. All right, so let's go ahead and show the image, and so I could get this one just to make it easy. Control copy, come down here, control. Okay, now what I am going to show is I am going to show blended, and I am going to show blended that I just created. You notice that this hasn't been masked at all. This is just taking the two images and putting them together. So blended, and then I want to move blended, and I'll put it at 1017 and 350. So let's just look at this blended image. This doesn't have any masking at all yet. Okay, here's blended. All right. So you see how now with this blended, what you can see with the blended right here, you're seeing just a straight blend between this and the original logo. And the problem is, yeah, I like how you can sort of see me through the logo, but you see the problem here is that where I'm supposed to show in the background, I'm faded out. So what I really want to do is I want this background to be the background, okay, and then I want this part to be the foreground. So what do I need to do now? I need to create a new foreground, right? I want the foreground, which is just the and of blended, okay, the and of blended and my foreground mask, okay, blended and my foreground mask. All right, so now we are going to quit, and then I'm going to apply the mask to this. Okay, so now I'm going to say foreground is equal to CV2 dot. I wonder if I could just change foreground up here somewhere. No, foreground is going to be equal to CV2 dot bitwise and then I want blended, comma, blended, and then my mask is equal to my foreground mask. So I'm going to take that composite image and I'm going to put the foreground mask where all I have is just the foreground, okay? I think it will make sense. I know this has been a little painful as I've explained it, but I think it'll make sense once we run it. So now, okay, so now I want to show foreground. I'll call this foreground 2 and foreground 2 and foreground 2 and foreground 2. And then this one we want to move over by 1324 and down 100. Okay, so this is just going to be foreground 2. So let's take a look at it. I didn't put my ending parentheses. Okay, let's take a look at it. Run Python file in terminal. Okay, there's foreground 2. Okay, so you see foreground 2 is what I wanted. Foreground 1 over here was just the logo, and it completely eliminated me. Now with foreground 2, what you can see with foreground 2, you can see me behind the logo. Now I've got to put the foreground 2 back into the composite image. Okay, so now I'm going to come to this composite image and I'm going to use foreground 2 instead of foreground 1. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Okay, so let's quit. I'll just make a new window. I'm going to make a new window instead. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to call it the composition final is equal to cv2.add. And since I've got the mask foreground and the mask background, I don't have to do an add weighted. Okay, I can just do an add, and we'll look at that in a second to understand why you just have to do an add. So what I'm going to add, I'm going to add the background, which is still the background with now foreground 2. Okay, and now I'm going to show that the composite final. All right, so let's do some adjustments. This will be comp final, and this will be comp final. Okay, and this will be comp final. And then here we're going to go over 1324 and down below at 350. Okay, so this should be combining foreground 2 with the original background, and you should be able to see me through that logo. All right. There it is. Boom. Okay. So you see, what's the difference between comp final and blended? The problem with blended is you're getting a faded out image of me in the background and not the full image. Now you've got me completely unaltered in the background, plus you're seeing me through the foreground, because I created this blended image and then used the blended image as a new foreground. Does that make sense? Now let's sit and think why I just had to add background and foreground 2 without any weights. Well, let's look at background. Background is this mask, okay? And then foreground 2 is this mask. So you didn't have to do it weighted. This is all black where I don't want anything. And then this is all black where I don't want anything. So by just simply adding the background, which is here, to the foreground 2, which is here, you get this. Is that pretty cool? Look at that. Okay, now the one last thing that I want to do is that you can imagine the one problem that I have here is you're going to want to tweak those values. And when I created blended, right, when I created blended here, I just made it half and half. So when I created blended here, I just said half and half. Well, the 2 have to add to 1, but you could sit and play with it where that watermark was just perfect. Okay. But what would be an easier way to do that? An easier way to do that would be to, yes, you guessed it, we're going to add a track bar up at the top, okay? So we're going to come up to the top and we're going to add a track bar that will allow us to dial in that opacity of the OpenCV, the OpenCV logo. Okay, so what we are going to want to do is we are going to want to add a track bar. So we'll kind of start up here at the top to do that. So what we're going to do is we are going to cv2.create track bar. And I think I want to put it on that window that we had that was blend value. No, I'm going to call the trackbar blend value. So that's the name of the trackbar. And I want to put it on the window which was blended, because that's the one we're going to want to look at as we blend. So we're going to put it on the window blended, and then I'm going to start it with an initial value of 50, right? That'll be kind of like 50-50, and then we'll go to 100. And then what do we want to do? We want to do the nothing function to be the callback function. If we called nothing, we've got to define it. So up here, I'll say define nothing x. If you don't understand this, go back and watch those earlier lessons where I explain this. Pass. Okay. So now I've created a track bar called blend value. It will show up in the window called blended. Now the only problem here is at this point in the program, Python has not seen or heard of that window blended. That's defined later on, so I need to kind of go ahead and name it here so that the program doesn't crash. I'll do a CV2 named window. We're not putting anything in the window, we're just letting it know there is going to be a window called blended, and that way I can create the track bar without things crashing. Okay, so now that should put the track bar on. Let's go ahead and just look at that to make sure nothing crashes. Why is it not happy? I think I didn't quit here. Define nothing. Oh, okay, that should not. It's a space there. Define nothing. Okay, can you see that? Right, now let's run it. Okay, now we've got our track bar here on blended, on our blended window, but it's not going to do anything. Okay, it's not going to do anything because we're not reading the track bar. So now we got to go in and actually read and use those values. All right. So we will come back down in the while loop, and once each time through the while loop, we are going to read the track bar. So I will do that after, let's see, where would be the best place to do it? I think that we want to go ahead and do it after we do the composite image. Got to get in the while loop. Okay, after the composite image and before we do blended, we want to get a value from that track bar so we'll know how much to blend. So what I'm going to say is the blend value is equal to cv2.get track bar position, get track bar position, and I want to get which track bar, blend value, we just created it, and then which window is it in? It is in the blended window, and then I really want to kind of divide it by 100. Okay, and that's because I put between 0 and 100, but really I need a number between 0 and 1, so I'm going to divide by 100. And then I'm going to say the opposite one, the blend value 2 is going to be equal to 1 minus blend value 1, right? Because if I want 10% of one, I need 90% of the other. If I want 90% of this one, I need 10% of this one. So I need one number to go from 0 to 1 and the other number to go from 1 to 0. And this should do it. So now here where I'd created blended, now instead of just saying 0.5, I'm going to make it blend value and blend value 2. So how much of frame am I going to keep? I'm going to keep blend value of frame. How much of CV logo am I going to keep? I'm going to keep blend value 2. Does that make sense? So as one comes up, the other one will go down. And I think that should make it work. Something went really wrong. Oh, it doesn't like blend value 1. And now nobody is happy. Oh, blend value 2 is 1 minus blend value, like that. All right, that should work now. Although it might not be happy because I kind of crashed the program. I am going to have to close Visual Studio. And I am going to have to open Visual Studio. And it came back up. It should have saved it. So let's try running it again. Run Python file in terminal. All right, boom, look at that. Okay, so this is blend value, where I'm just taking the two images and blending them, and I'm going to be blending them on a trackbar with a trackbar. So you see, if I come down to 0, it is all the logo and none of me. If I come over here, it is all of me and none of the logo. Okay, if I'm in the middle, it is like this. But again, what I do then is I take this blended image and I mask it with the foreground mask, and then I just keep this foreground too, and then I add it back to the background. Okay, so then this composite final is what we're interested in, because the background stays clear, all me, and then the foreground is mixing me with the logo. So watch composite final here, and let me get further out of your way. Okay, watch composite final as I do the slider bar. Okay, so here I'm back to the foreground is all logo, the background is all me. If I come all the way across, the foreground is all me and the background is all me. If I start sliding back, I should just get a very faint watermark. Okay, do you see that? You can kind of start seeing that coming in there. That is pretty slick. I feel like I need to kind of recap this. Okay, let me see if I can recap this, and then you guys ask me questions down there if this if you've been able to follow. What we wanted was to add the logo of OpenCV on top of me. The logo is the background, the logo is the foreground, I am the background. And that's how we got to composite image. So what did we do? We took the logo, we turned it into grayscale. Then from grayscale, we turned it into a mask. Remember, with a mask, white is what you want to keep, black is what you want to cover up. And so the background, everywhere it's white, it's going to be me, and everywhere it's black, it's going to be the mask. All right, so then I and the background mask with me. I and the background mask with me, and I get the background image. Okay, everything is background. Now similarly, I create the foreground mask, where what do I want to keep? What's white? What do I want to throw away? What's black? I and the foreground mask with the original logo, and then I get this. This is the foreground. Okay, this is the foreground. This is the background. I add the foreground to the background, and I get what our original goal was. Here, the composite image, right? You see where it's in front of me and covering me up if I'm behind it. But then I wasn't happy with that. I wanted to, instead of having the foreground be just, instead of the foreground being just the OpenCV level, I wanted the foreground to be a mix between me and the logo. So I did a weighted add between me and the logo, and I got this blended value. Now that's not the final result, because you see I'm washed out in the background. So I mask the blended value to create a new foreground up here, a new foreground, and then I add that to the background to get the final composite image. Okay, the composite final. And then that is controlled with the trackbar. Is this the point that you just throw the thing away and quit, or were you able to follow me through? Guys, go back and watch the video again, because I really do explain it. I really do explain it. You just have to understand. You create a background mask, and the background mask is an and, or the background image is an and between the background mask and what you want in the background. You create a foreground mask. And the foreground image is an and between the image you want in the foreground and the foreground mask. And then you add the background to the foreground and you get the whole image. Then you can go in and start doing some pretty fancy stuff and start doing some mixing and so forth. Guys, this is probably one of the most important lessons. You really need to understand how to do masking and thresholding. Okay, you got to create a grayscale. Then you got to create a mask. And then you got to do bitwise ands between your masks and your images. And then you've got to add things together to recreate the whole image. So go back and watch this video again. Leave comments down below. I hope some of you guys leave me some feedback. I was thinking maybe that I should have tried to make this with 2 lessons, but it was just not an easy point for me to see a good break point. I know this was a hard lesson, but I wanted you to kind of go through the whole thing. And as always, you will have homework, okay? This is what your homework is. Let me quit out of this. Okay, this is what your homework is. Okay, I have another image for you. Okay, I have another image for you. And that image you can get over here at our most excellent Bacteria World. That's bacteria-world.com and then /pl.jpg. So go to bacteriaworld.com/pl.jpg. You can get this and drag and drop it into your Pro folder like that. So you've got the image that you need to work with. And then what I want your program to do is I want you to create a live video with a moving logo over it, okay? So let me show you here what I want you to do. This is your homework. Okay, boom. Do you see here this live image? And then do you see that logo is moving like a little box? Okay, it's a moving logo. And don't jailbreak. When you get to the edge, what are you going to have to do? Mounts. Okay. Now you guys see that this would be pretty easy if the logo had a clear background, but it doesn't. You see, you've got to do your thresholding and your masking. You've got to do your thresholding and your masking so that you have to create a background and you have to create a foreground and then you create a... Man, I'm giving you so many hints. Like if you look right here, this is the image. What do? I grayscale it. Then what do? I create a background mask, right? Background's white. Okay, create a background mask. Then what do? Create a foreground mask. And then what do? I create a foreground image. And then what do? I create a background image. You see? The background image is actually moving. And then I create the overall composite of the little square. And then I got to put the square back on the original image. And then I got to move it around. Do you see that? Boom. Okay, that's your homework for next week. You guys leave me a comment down below. Think about giving me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel. If you haven't, be sure to hit the bell so you'll get notifications for these future lessons. And again, really want to appreciate you guys that are helping me out on Patreon because I'm drinking a lot of coffee these days. These lessons are getting long. Keep me in coffee beans. Okay, Paul McCorder from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.